Blazing Saddles actress gave a little extra. In 1974, Warner Brothers released a movie that would go on to become an iconic classic and forever change the film industry. Despite its initial lukewarm reviews, this groundbreaking work was soon wildly successful and cemented itself as a staple of pop culture history. As viewers reveled in what they saw on screen, many were also captivated by the magic behind the scenes that made it all possible, leading them to crave more information about how it came together. If you think you know all there is to know about the classic Western spoof, Blazing Saddles, then think again. Here are some fascinating facts that just might transform your entire viewing experience of this timeless masterpiece. An unlikely appearance. Movie premieres are renowned for their extravagant splendor, with tailored suits and famous people arriving in luxurious vehicles. Down you go. For movie buffs, this well-known scene will ring a bell. Mongo nonchalantly pulled his horse up to an appropriate parking area, yet was met with another equestrian. Unfazed by the situation, he approached and walloped their steed so ferociously that both riders were sent tumbling onto the ground, henceforth referred to as down you go. It turns out Mel Brooks didn't merely invent this incident from scratch. In fact, it actually originated from one of Sid Caesar's old stories. Bad taste. Despite the fact that many viewers found Mongo's knockout punch scene to be incredibly funny, some viewed it as inappropriate, and animal rights activists were especially riled up. Even though no horses were actually hurt during filming, people argued that a less violent scene would have been much more suitable in order to avoid giving anyone any ideas from the movie. Fortunately for everyone involved, filmmakers didn't need to harm any animals. They simply had horses trained well enough so that when commanded to fall over, on cue. Getting the boot. When the legendary Gig Young was cast as the Waco Kid, we were expecting an impressive performance, and he didn't disappoint. His portrayal of a drunk man hanging from his bunk while berating Bart was absolutely mesmerizing. It's hard to believe that one could act so accurately when inebriated. After it was revealed that Gig Young had been inebriated to the point of halting production, he was removed from the set and replaced with Gene Wilder. In later years, Young took legal action against the studio for breach of contract. Sleeping with the stars. For the comedic Western movie, some of the actors took their roles very seriously. Notably, Slim Pickens as Taggart, head of a ruthless gang looking to take over Rock Ridge. To ensure he was in character and fully understood his role as an outlaw, Slim did something remarkable. Each night before shooting scenes, he would sleep outside with his Winchester rifle beside him, just like a real cowboy. Reach for the sky. Despite his courage and heroic acts, Sheriff Bart was not well liked by the townspeople. In order to be released from their grasp, he did something extraordinary. He held a gun up to his own head. Unbelievably enough, this idea had been derived from an incident in Mel Brooks' childhood. As a young boy trying to shoplift some gum and water toy pistols one day, when the clerk stepped forward in an attempt to stop him, little Mel threatened that if he didn't let him go right away, then he would pull on the trigger. This scene later became known as Reach for the Sky. A room full of crickets. Warner Brothers had faith that Brooks could recreate the same charm of the producers in his latest movie. However, upon preliminary viewings, the feedback from studio executives was overwhelmingly negative. They found it to be not funny at all. Despite this initial criticism, Brooks remained convinced that once exposed to a wider audience with different opinions and tastes, people would love it. And he was proven right. With renewed enthusiasm for what seemed like a lost cause, Warner Brothers decided to go ahead with releasing A Room Full of Crickets after all, and were delightedly surprised by everyone's positive reactions. A stingy studio. Prior to release, Brooks had a hard time convincing the studio the movie's potential success. The head of distribution declared that it's simply too vulgar for the American people and called to dump it and take a loss. But John Calley, president of the studio, made an executive decision. He opted to initially launch the producers in certain cities such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, as luck would have it, though it turned out to being their biggest blockbuster by far. Gridiron Gang. Harvey Korman's Hedley Lamar might not have been successful in his attempt to oust Sheriff Bart. However, Alex Karras made a name for himself in the football world by playing 12 seasons with the NFL and emerging as part of their All-Pro team 9 times. He even grabbed a spot on the 60s All-Decade team and was selected for 4 Pro Bowls. After departing from the Detroit Lions, he took up acting, debuting on Webster, before moving on to other projects that featured his impressive talent. The franchise that never was. Andrew Bergman was one of the key ingredients to the success of Blazing Saddles with his hilarious screenplay. After the movie became so successful, his work was used to create new material such as the TV series Black Bart. The pilot aired on April 4, 1975 and starred Louis Gossett Jr. as Bart. The franchise that never was, amazingly, the show kept filming despite never being seen by the public. This was because the show was produced under a contract clause stating that it was an official sequel. Musical chairs. When it came to thinking outside the box, Brooks was a creative genius. He deviated from what was commonly seen in films by employing foreground music instead of background music. And he chose wisely when selecting one of the most talented band leaders out there, Count Basie. His musical prowess shone through as they played April in Paris for his movie. Plus, complementing this masterful piece even further, Brooks composed the film's theme song himself. Frankie Lane ultimately sang it and absolutely nailed it. Your Name is My Name. Mel Brooks had brilliantly crafted the perfect antagonist for the movie, Blazing Saddles, and he decided to name him Hedley Lamar. However, Harvey Korman soon realized that this resembled a Hollywood actress's name who was contracted with MGM from the 1930s to the 1950s, Hedy Lamarr. Unsurprisingly, she wasn't too thrilled about it. Inevitably, though, they were able to settle out of court before any further legal action took place. A child arrived just the other day. When Mel Brooks wrote the script for Blazing Saddles, his son Max had recently arrived. In a financial rut, Brooks knew he needed to make this movie work, yet didn't want to compromise quality in order to do so. With that drive came an added sense of purpose. Much like Charles Dickens taking on projects purely for money's sake, Brooks wanted audiences everywhere to appreciate and love the film, regardless of its backstory. For that reason, he was determined not just to get it done, but also ensure it was good, and succeeded. The Uninvited Extra. To bring the movie to a close, Sheriff Bart and the Waco Kid were chased off the Warner Brothers set. As they ran through the gates, breaking away from reality, everyone around them turned right, except for one person. This random stranger had stumbled onto the set without knowing when it was time to leave. Mel Brooks made him sign an appearance waiver so he could stay in this iconic scene anyway. You're Fired. Madeline Kahn was slated to be part of the movie adaptation for Mame, a Broadway musical starring Lucille Ball and Bea Arthur. Just 24 hours before she began filming for Blazing Saddles, though, Kahn was shockingly let go from her role in Mame. It's said that Madeline deliberately gave an underwhelming performance so that she could pursue a different character, Lily von Stupp, which later turned out to be one of her most recognizable roles. There's magic in the air on Broadway. After the illustrious reception of his Broadway production, The Producers, Mel Brooks was asked to bring Blazing Saddles to the Great White Way. Despite having a clear vision for how it would be executed, he still harbored some fears regarding its provocative content and whether or not it would pass today's standards. It's a rather risky material with its use of racial slurs, he stated. I don't want to shy away from the fact, but I'm uncertain if such language will land favorably now when back then they permitted me. Awe-inspiring artistry lives within every stage on Broadway, something which even Mel Brooks can attest. If I may say so myself. Mel Brooks is no stranger to recognition for the iconic movie Blazing Saddles. In a show of unbridled confidence, he declared it one of the most hilarious films in history. When asked about its comparison with Some Like It Hot, his response was overflowing with pride. Billy Wilder's feature is undoubtedly amusing. However, I believe that when compared scene by scene, mine has far more humor than anyone else's work, and while I know it may sound boastful, deep down I feel this might be the comical masterpiece cinema has ever seen. Legging it out. Ever since Brooks conceived the character of Lily von Stupp, he had Madeline Kahn in mind, as he was certain she could bring out his humorous potential. When they held her audition, though, Brooks requested that she show him her legs. initially assuming his motives were impure and remarking, "Oh, you're that kind of guy." Kahn soon uncovered what Brooks truly desired: for Marlene Dietrich's famous leggy on-screen persona to be replicated in the comedy classic. However, she warned him sternly, no touching. The choice prior to Cleven. Despite being incredibly impressed with the talent of Richard Pryor, Mel Brooks ultimately chose Cleven Little to fill the role of Sheriff Bart in the movie, a decision that would later prove pivotal. Although Pryor was undoubtedly blessed with immense comedic ability, it was difficult to overlook not only his controversial material and substance abuse issues, but also an incident where he had nearly burned himself alive. Fortunately for all involved, though, when Mel saw how perfectly Cleven delivered each line, he happily gave him the part. I can't say that, can I? Burton Gilliam was cast as Lyle, one of the bad guy's henchmen in the script. A specific line included a racial slur directed at Sheriff Bart, obviously an uncomfortable phrase for him to use. Little saw that it was all business and gave Gilliam his approval, despite Gilliam's reservations about it. Little went on by saying, "In any other context, I would challenge you to a fight. However, this is just work, so don't fret over it," giving comfort and permission for Buckley to speak those words without fear of repercussion or confrontation from anyone involved. On the cutting floor. Mel Brooks pushed the limits of comedy, bringing delight to everyone with a funny bone but instilling fear in studios. They repeatedly asked him to cut scenes from this film, yet he only agreed to slash the most risque one. In the cutting floor scene, Bart and Lily Von Stupp were together in her dressing room when she temporarily blew out the candle and questioned, "Is it true about what they say about you people?" Unfazed by this innuendo, Bart shot back, "I hate to disillusion you, ma'am, but you're sucking on my arm." This edgy repartee made audiences gasp, both impressed and scandalized at once.